Drum roll. Ah, there she is. Hey, Erin.
Here I am.
Just to
Hi.
move my seat back a bit. I'm like right up in there.
I know.
Not
I
like
feel the
going
same
live
way.
from your vehicle. I got the data warning today. My phone's like, you've used a lot of data. I'm like, yes, I know.
Yes. Welcome to my life.
Right? Yeah, this
Yeah.
is what I do. So how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah. I'm like new to the whole Instagram live thing, so I'm always worried that I am doing it right, but it looks like it's all working well. So,
You're doing it perfectly, and the fact that you haven't done it a lot just makes me so excited. Yeah, we'll talk about that in another conversation. But yeah, Instagram Live is just such a really cool way to connect. So I'm excited to be able to use it. It's a free
yeah.
marketing tool to introduce
There you
you
go.
to the girls here in Fempreneur Land. So tell us about your day-to-day life, like what you do in your career.
Yeah. So, I used to be in engineering construction, and about 3 years ago, well, longer than that, probably 5 or 6 years ago, I have to add the COVID time to everything because it's just like
Right.
2 years just evaporates from your life. Yeah, so probably around 6 years ago, started to get really interested in leadership. Was considering, leaving the construction industry. I wasn't having a great experience there,
Hmm.
and got really curious about leadership. And anyway, stuck around for a few more years and figured out that I didn't have to do things like everyone else, and I could still have a good time being in construction. Uh, and then last year decided that, instead of just impacting one team in construction and engineering, I would like to do more and impact more teams. And so fully moved into my own coaching and leadership development business. And that is where I'm at today. So a day in the life of Erin looks like a lot of video time right now because a lot of training is still online. And so I do a lot of team training, lots of group and individual coaching, lots of conversations around leading with empathy, having difficult conversations, dealing with high stress, burnout, deadlines, pressure, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I suspect there's a bit of a story behind this career switch for you. Like you must have experienced some, dare I say, awful leaders or maybe some bad things that caused you to want to swoop in there and Erinize everything and like learn how to do things better. Like, do you have any stories you can share with us about maybe leadership that you experienced that maybe wasn't so fantastic?
Yeah, I think for me, it started very early on in my career and I think this is probably typical anywhere anybody is working and they are not quote unquote like a kind of the dominant group, right? They're not a part of the
Mm.
dominant group. I got some feedback, started really early on that I was just too emotional, that I needed to get a game face, that everyone could tell what was going on all the time, and that wasn't good. But that was
Oh my
about all I
gosh.
got, right? Was just like, toughen up. You're too emotional. And so for a lot of years, I tried, right? I thought that the
Mm.
emotion in me was a bad thing, that if I was going to survive, I needed to learn how to do it their way. All I had were male role models, in terms of leadership. So very masculine, very compartmentalized,
Mm.
expressed emotion in a different way. Not that they didn't have it, but I
Okay.
didn't see that early on, right?
Right.
And so for, the first 10 years of my life, I was just sort of like, it was all about how do I fit in? How do I do this better? How do I take their advice and, try to become more tough?
Okay. Yeah, I
Um,
took a bunch of notes, so I have some things written down here that tie into what you're saying. Can I just ask? So I'm kind of reading from your like quoting your website right now. But one thing that you did say was that masculine thinking and way of being, that game face, like you had to kind of learn it and then you had to unlearn it, it sounds like.
yep.
So yeah, keep talking about that because I totally can relate to that. And I feel like I've had to do that too and still am trying to leave my masculine sort of, entrepreneur behind. So yeah.
Yeah. And I guess where I'm at in my journey is unlearning it to the degree to which I learned it, but not giving up on it totally. Cause I think it takes both, right? I think we need
Mm,
to find that kind of balance in the masculine and in the feminine. There's a big part of me that loves to write goals and achieve things and,
Yeah.
to do that. And that's a very masculine way of being. There's another part of me that wants this ease and this flow that's like, I don't know what I want to do today. Let's just go with the flow and see what it takes me to, which is a very feminine way of being, which I'm not used to being in, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so for me, the learning is still in finding both, because I think there needs to be structure and there needs to be freedom, right, at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've
Mm-hmm.
ever seen it. It's maybe a little bit off topic, but there was this. I came across this. I think it was a blog post years ago that used the analogy of like a trellis in a garden and a rose bush or a climbing vine on the trellis. So the trellis is the masculine in us, and the rose
Okay.
bush is the feminine. So
Huh.
without the trellis, the rose bush grows all over the place and it has no structure or form, and usually kind of takes over things, right? And it's kind of
Yeah.
messy. But
Yeah.
with too much trellis, right, too much confinement, too much structure, then the rose bush can't do what it needs to do, and it gets constricted and it doesn't bloom and it's not pretty, right? And
Yeah.
so there is this balance in both.
Mm.
We need some structure to kind of hold us, and we need the freedom and flexibility to go where we want to go as the
Yeah.
feminine. So,
So you're a small northern Alberta town farm girl, like the small town and the farm girl. Like, tell me where are you from?
so I grew up on a farm north of Westlock.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's about an hour and a half north of Edmonton. My family still all lives there, and we
Nice.
go back often. My kids wish we lived on the farm. I'm like, do you? Do you really wish you were a farm kid? I don't know
Oh
about that.
man. Right.
But yeah, and it was great. It's it's so funny, right? Growing up on the farm, like you are at the mercy of nature when you're farming,
Yeah.
which in itself is this beautiful blend of the masculine and the feminine, right? There's structure,
Mm.
there's things we
Yes.
can control, there's things we can't control, and there's just, it's this beautiful blend. I didn't see it growing up, obviously. But, so yeah, about the 10 to 15-year career mark for me is when I started to really go, if I have to do that to be successful in this business, I don't think that's what I want to do. Right. It just started to feel like it was too, I felt like I was starting to get split into two. And it was like
Mm.
I had to pick a path. Um, so I started to do a lot of personal development work in terms of, it started out with the intention to fix this emotional side, but quickly turned into it
Oh.
doesn't need to be fixed. Actually, we need to
Okay.
understand it and learn more from it. And there's a lot of information here.
Wow.
And then started to kind of have those conversations. And then that was about the time, diversity, equity, inclusion really started to become a predominant part of our discussion in engineering, in construction, in the industries that I was in. So I became a part of those discussions. And again, we're still trying to fit this like round peg in a square hole, or square peg in a round hole, whatever way it works.
Hmm.
And it's really where I would say that fire of that kind of leadership fire got lit in me, and sort of, I could see some really good examples of what I thought it should look like that was making an impact, but they weren't yet in the decision-making seat, right? The people that were still making decision and informing culture are still very much bought into a very old, outdated masculine paradigm of leadership. And so
Hmm.
I'm here to kind of shake things up and disrupt it. And it's easier to do it when I'm not inside an organization and my job depends on it.
Right. Because you get to go in and just call a spade, and you're like, and you're paying
Yeah.
me to do it.
And you're paying me to do it. And I don't have to work here tomorrow.
And I wrote a book about it, so yeah, just add that to the list.
Yeah,
So you wrote a book about all this stuff. Like, how did that come about?
I did. Totally by accident, I will tell you. It started as a desire to speak. And when I was talking to some different, speaking coaches and things like that, they're like, well, start writing because you need to know what the hell you're going to say. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll start writing. And then as I was sharing it with some of the mentors that I had in industry mentors, but also just like life mentors, other kind of young, moms who were at similar stages that I was at with my kids and things like that. They're like, Erin, this is a book. Like, you need to publish this. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I've never, this wasn't a dream of mine to become a published author. I mean, it's cool now and I do a lot of writing and there's tons of book ideas that just keep pouring in. But
Yeah.
it certainly didn't start that way. And the majority of the book was written during a time where I'd actually taken a leave of absence from my career to support our daughter, who in grade 6 was diagnosed with ADHD and learning disabilities, which was like
Mm.
a huge blow as a parent, but a real gift as well, you know, in terms of just the overall timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Cool.
found
So then
myself
you
with
got,
lots of space to write. And
okay. And you were in a
yeah,
full-on leadership role at that moment. Not that we aren't always as parents, but like you were really stepping into
yeah.
leading this daughter of yours who really needed some extra TLC. So that must have been kind of neat to be in that mindset like all the time and then be writing about it at the same time.
Yeah. Well, having like myself as well needing to be led, I had a lot of decisions to make. I actually went in to quit my job and my leader at the time was like, that's one option, or we can just give you a leave of absence. And that was sort of this glimpse into like, holy cow, you actually care about what I'm going through. And,
Oh, yeah.
you know, didn't just worry about the bottom line impact to your team and your projects, but really like I felt that you actually have my best interests at heart here, you know?
Okay.
And so that was a glimpse into like, maybe that's what this empathy thing is kind of all about.
Hmm.
So that was really cool to be led in that way through that period of time, as well as leading my family and ultimately then coming back into my career after that period of time passed.
Okay, so you were able to take a little bit of time away from the corporate world to really lean into your daughter, write your book. You must have changed a lot. Like what window of time was that? Like how many months?
It was about 10 months when I came back into, then I went back into a corporate world. This was the time in oil and gas in Calgary where everyone was laid off. So both my
Yeah.
husband and I were sort of sitting at home looking at each other going like, who's going to go back to work? Because one of us does.
Yeah.
So we both put the feelers out. I got something before he did. So I ended up going back, which was great as well, because he ended up taking about 18 months to stay with the kids and help, you know,
Wow.
again, you know, help her through that period of time and our
Okay.
family when the kids were quite little. And it was a real
Yeah.
gift. We've always traded that back and forth. And I just feel like
Nice.
really blessed that both of us have been able to do that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah. And so then I went back in, and that was when it was like, oh my goodness, this is so uncomfortable, you know, like so uncomfortable. Because you're right, I did. And I had quite a few different ideas about how I thought things should be done or what I would do. Started practicing and kind of testing it out with different teams I was leading and in different environments, and was like, all right, there's something to this, because I'm getting results. And you know what? It's
Wow.
not about me finding my game face, and it's not about me toughening up. It's actually about me being more vulnerable and leaning into that, being okay with my emotions, whatever those are, right? Being able
Hmm.
to express them, because it allowed other people to also express them. And we had like trust was built quicker. You know, we got results faster. We were able to have real conversations about real difficult things. And I'm always sort of one of these things, if I'm going to leave, I'm going to do it on my own terms, not because
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't win or I had to give up, right? It's like,
Yeah.
so decided to sort of, you know, go back into full on construction and lead construction projects and kind of give it a whirl and sort of see if this made a difference in terms of what I'd learned and how I put it together. Had a great time on my last 2 projects with the teams that I led. And then decided, you know what, I want to impact more than just one team at a time. And it's time to move on.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So you really just stepped into your own business because you had some pretty serious proof in the pudding and you were like, I need to go and spread this to more people in my own way. And good for you.
Yeah,
That's
I
so
mean,
cool.
we have 3 children, so I was working a full-time career with 3 kids and then trying to run this part-time business with the book on the side. So it became very, I say quickly, but it was a 4-year process to get to this point
Mm,
where I'm
okay,
like,
there we
okay,
go.
you know, now it's
Yeah,
time. And I
yeah.
feel like, yes, the proof is there. Yes, I have the book, and now it's time to really kind of step into this space. So
So
I
about a
think
4-year time period.
anybody that's walked that path can
Yeah.
feel the split the longer you stay in there. It got to the point where I literally felt like I was doing the splits, and I'm like, I'm not very flexible. So I need to
And
get
thank
on
you
one path
for,
or the other.
yes, yes. And thank you for taking us through that whole journey. I think a lot of a lot of us, and I'm guilty of this too. We kind of, it's like labor. Like I'm one of those people that like I did it and I literally don't
Forget
ever want
about
to
it.
talk about it or think about it, and I skim over it. And then, you get around those people that really talk about it and you're like, I gotta go. Like, I don't want to talk about this. Like,
Mhm.
but it's important to talk about it because
Yeah.
there's people doing it or about to be doing it all the time.
Yeah.
And, you don't want people to feel like it's no big deal. And you also don't want people to be terrified because we all do it and we survive it and it's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's like, thank you for talking about that 4 year period and letting us know that it wasn't just like, oh, I just decided to quit my job and start a business and here I am and I have a book
Yeah.
now. And like, no, it takes work, but it's doable. I'm always curious to know who you surrounded yourself with during that time when you were just
Mm.
transitioning your life and you were stepping into more of who you really were meant to be. Like, how did you, because I feel like we can't keep hanging out with the same people. We have to find some new
No.
people usually, right? Like, who were your people?
Yeah, and I think that was really that was part of the reason that I needed to stay in my corporate job because it definitely helped pay for some of the coaching programs and just personal
Yeah.
development work that I did that I knew, a new business probably isn't going to be able to sustain that. So yeah, I joined a number of, for probably 2 or 3 years, I was in a number of different kind of year-long coaching slash mentoring programs with other, mostly female entrepreneurs. I've got
Cool.
a couple of really good friends from university that have always been in the entrepreneurial space. So I was, spending time with them and picking their brains, but definitely moving into new communities and just sort of having different conversations because
Nice.
it's a very different mindset when we're, now fully responsible. Like I just said, I've finished this. The last 6 weeks have been kind of hectic, but I did it to myself, right? I can't blame anyone else but me right now. Whereas, the corporate mindset, it's always somebody else's fault, right? Things
Yeah.
are happening to you. You're at the effect of
Yes.
whatever's going on inside the organization. And now it's like, yeah, I was busy, but it was great. And I did it to myself. So lesson
So what
learned.
have you been up to this past 6 weeks?
Just well, how I got myself into it was not earlier in the year. I had done a lot of. I look back on it now, and I had done a lot of really great boundary setting in terms of when I needed time off, protected sort of my creative time, kids' PD days,
Mm-hmm.
holidays, all of that kind of stuff. So as work requests came in, they had to fit around all of that stuff. Those
Wow.
blocks were already in the calendar. I did not do that for the fall. And so as work came in, I just kept shoving it in the calendar if there was a free space.
Uh,
And then all of a sudden I got here and was like, okay, well, we're working a lot. So, there was some days that I would have rather have been, kids had the day off or I needed a break or whatever it was. It was only 6 weeks. It was a very uncomfortable lesson to learn, but it was one that I swiftly learned. And I can tell you that 22 is all blocked out.
okay, so what you have just said is like exactly what I needed to hear. So I don't know if anybody else got anything of that, but I did. And thank you because that's one thing. So I'm currently planning 2022, like, and it's been so much fun. But guess what? I haven't put into 2022 yet.
PD days,
Vacation.
holidays,
Like,
like,
what am I even thinking?
yeah,
Okay, so thank you. You've totally
yeah.
changed my life. Okay. I want to ask you a question. Um, I just I just want to ask for your top three strategies or two or four or whatever for making real connections like in the world right now. Like how are you making real connections? I know soon you can add Instagram Live to that list, but like what's
Right.
working for you about making real connections?
Well,
Like
I
you
think
have like this publicist or like a agent or something, right?
so. I have started working with someone. Charlotte is amazing in terms of just, getting into markets that I probably wouldn't have been able to get into. For me, I still am working on my network. Like I
Okay.
had no idea how big that really was until I started to need to kind of dig in and do that. Um, I think also just learning how to ask for that referral, how to
Mm-hmm.
ask for the introduction,
Mm-hmm.
that type of activity, which I know I certainly wasn't good at, and I definitely hear from other women that it's hard to sort of self promote and to talk about what it is you do.
Right.
So definitely getting more comfortable with that.
Okay.
I think, as far as real connection goes, the more I can remember to just be me, which is somewhat,
Mm,
it's a little bit messy. There's often kids and pets and dogs and things happening in the background. It's definitely not Instagram polished, let's put it that way. But it's me, right?
but
And
no
I
one
think
likes
that's
Instagram polished anyways. Like, I
right?
don't.
It's
Do
not
you
real
follow any of those
connection.
accounts to look like they're perfect every day?
Yeah.
Ugh,
No. Ooh, sorry. I just
weirdos.
kicked my
Yeah, and if
camera.
you don't knock your phone over at least once during a live, you're not a human being. So,
So there you go. So yeah, I think it's just really kind of being real about that. And I think a lot of, I look back on the early parts of my career, and that was so much of it was spent trying to be someone that I wasn't, right? To not have these big emotions, to not
mm,
show things in the way that I showed them or shared things the way that I shared it. And so I've just really kind of the last, well, pretty solid 10 years have been getting more and more comfortable just being me.
okay. So you
Yeah.
find the more you're just being yourself, the more you're making those real connections.
Yep.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
I like
And
it.
even just sharing like the real stories behind, recently I wrote an article sharing my postpartum depression stories, which I'd never shared publicly before. And it was like
Mm,
the people that reached out, that are in my network already that know me are just like, it just took it to that next level, And again, it's like,
mm,
yeah, it's part of my story.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing so much about yourself. Like, yeah, just even you sharing about your daughter's, journey with,
Mm-hmm.
ADHD and just, everything that you've been willing to share. I don't interview a lot of people that are willing to go that deep that quickly. And I mean, it solidifies that you practice what you preach. You know that the more real you are, the more real connections you make. And like, that is
Yeah.
like such a cool tagline. The more real you are, the more real connections you make. Like, that's going to be what I always remember about this conversation with you, Erin. So thank you for
Yeah.
saying all the valuable, wise things that you have said in this interview. I want to ask you another question. What would you tell your, I don't know, 10-year, 20-year, 10-year, 20-year younger self? Which number should we go with?
Ooh, there's probably some information for both of them.
Okay, go ahead and do both if you want, but like one or both.
Oh, yeah. 20-year younger self, I think it would be that we were never meant to do this alone. You know,
Mm,
so much of my early sort of married years and young mother years was trying to prove to who knows what, I don't even know who, right, that I could do it, right? That
mm,
somehow it meant that I was a good wife or a good mother or a good engineer or whatever that was. And I just think
mm,
she really needed to hear that it really wasn't about doing it on your own, that it's about
yeah,
being, the strength is in inviting the support in, right? And again, being real about where you're at and what you need, and then
yeah,
being able to accept being able to accept that support, because I was always willing to give it but never willing to receive it. And
mm,
I think there's a balance in that, right?
mm,
10-year younger self, she really needed to learn how to rest, and she's still
oh,
learning that one.
okay.
So I have a little sticky note on my computer that says rest is productive, just to remind me that I can take a
Oh,
break,
yes,
that the
I've preached
brain,
naps for years, so I'm so happy to hear you
I
say
love
that. Like,
naps,
I'm a
right?
daily napper, not for long, like
I
20
Nope.
minutes, but
Yeah, a good power snooze is and it's so funny because my dad used to be one of those people, like he'd come in from working all day or whatever, he'd have lunch, he'd lay down on the couch, put his cap over his face for like 15,
yes,
20 minutes and then be up and ready to go. And I'm like,
yes,
yeah, I can do that.
yeah. Yeah, and
And
then people are like, I can't nap because I can't fall asleep in that little amount of time. And you have to literally train yourself like a baby
mhm,
to do these things. Like,
mhm.
this is not like I'm going to have a
It's a
20-minute
skill.
nap. It's going to take you a week or 2 weeks to train yourself to do it, ladies. But do it because it's life changing. And yeah,
Yeah,
anyways, I'm happy to hear you say that rest is productive. Is that what you said?
that's what I said. Yep.
Yeah, I love it.
Still working on that one, and just Yeah, like being able to unplug, especially as an entrepreneur. I think we can work 24/7 if we want to. There's always
Yeah.
something to do. I mean, there's some new blog post to write or social media thing to post or article to share or, copy to update, whatever it is. And your brain's always coming up with ideas and, ways to do things. But what I've learned in this very short period of time is that when I'm as busy as I have been this last 6 weeks, there's zero time for me to be
Mm.
creative and to actually invest in the business. And so
Okay.
being able to unplug and to rest and to be, just allow my brain to um, explore, I guess,
Mm.
without
Mhm.
a goal or a deadline or, a reason. There is a lot of
Yes.
productivity in that. Actually, a really good friend of mine just recommended the book Bored but Brilliant, or Brilliant but Bored, or something like that.
Oh, I haven't
So
heard of that
that's
one.
next on my list to read because I think that's where I'm going to dig into.
Yeah, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I like you, Erin.
It's been
Like,
great.
like we're hanging out again sometime soon. For real though.
Yes.
So many things to ask you. We don't have a lot of time left, but we have a lot of aspiring authors and a lot of women in the community that are already working on their books, probably many that I don't even know about.
Yep.
Tell us about that journey. Like, how long did it take from, I mean, I know you'd done a lot of writing when you were like, oh shit, I might have a book here, but like,
Yeah.
how long did it take you to go from that like aha moment to having the book done?
Um, Actually getting the words out was probably the easiest part. It's felt hard in the moment because you don't have anything to compare it to, right? There's no frame
Right.
of reference. So, as you're okay, another 1,000 words, another 1,000 words, I'm almost there, and you're constantly, even after the day it published and it went live, I'm like, ooh, I would probably change this. Like it's a snapshot in time, right? Is
Yeah.
is what I would tell you. So at some point you have to pull the pen and say, I'm publishing it. Because if you sit on it, there's always
Yeah.
going to be something to add. There's always going to be something new. There's always going to be a perspective that changes. But that's just your idea for book number 2. So,
Yes.
or
Oh,
update it.
yes.
So the writing process was quite narrow for me, like maybe 6 months.
Okay.
Um, and then I worked with a company that assists like self-published authors to get the book
Yeah.
live. Because I was working full time at the time, I'd gone back to work. I had 3 kids at home. I'm like, I can't learn how to do all this stuff by myself. And I'm definitely not an editor. I will tell you that right now. Detail orientedness is not my strong suit, as
Yeah.
evidenced by a lot of my writing online that does not get edited by anybody. But so yeah, they brought an editing team, an artist to do the cover design and helped format all the files and do all of that. And that process, we started in August and the book was live on Amazon and print formats in December. So not too
Nice.
long.
Cool.
Yeah.
So good to hear. That's so awesome. Okay, so yeah, you've shared so many awesome things. Your strategies for making new real connections, very, very helpful. And from farm girl to engineer to having your own business as a leadership coach. Yeah,
Yeah.
can we
Yeah.
call you that? I can't
Sure.
remember what your official title is on your website because I don't have it in front of me, but I just think it's such a fantastic story and it's so inspiring. So thank you for sharing it. And how do like to work with your clients? Like, do you work most with corporate or do you work more with entrepreneurs? What's your favorite? Or you probably don't want to say.
No, I love both but they're so different, right?
Mm,
They are so different. So on the entrepreneurial side, um, predominantly I work with them through either small group programs. So I have one coming up in January, which is Confident Conversations. Always a fun time to come and get uncomfortable about difficult things, right?
uh,
Somebody said to me after they finished the first one was like, I don't know how you're going to market to somebody that they need to come and get uncomfortable to talk about difficult things, but it really works. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll just say that. I don't know.
I like it.
So that's starting in January. Also, we'll be kicking off a group leadership development program. So, again, focused on not only leading others, but leading yourself, because that's a big part
Hmm.
of being able to show up and lead others. So, that's sort of how entrepreneurs can work with me. I do some one on one coaching, slots are limited. So it just depends on kind of what you need and where I'm at. And then
Mm-hmm.
corporately, yeah, I do a lot of corporate training. And then really what I like to do is corporate training with embedment coaching, so that people actually don't just take a 2-day course and put the book on the shelf like we all did when we were in corporate, that we actually take the course and then use the skills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So erinthorp.ca.
Correct. And no E on the end of Thorpe. So,
Oh, good. I didn't do that wrong in the title of this
no,
video.
you didn't. Well
Okay.
done.
Erin
Yes.
Thorp without an E on the end. .ca and EL Thorp on Instagram.
Correct.
Are you pretty active on LinkedIn these days, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
LinkedIn and Instagram, probably the most active. And yeah, you can find out more about me on my website.